Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1994 and 1995 Sportflix sets for baseball. When Sportflix was doing its run in the 1980s, I would love to be able to say to you that it suffered from technological limitations of the day. But I can't say that because back in the 1970s, Xerography made great cards for Kellogg's. And when Optographics made their Sportflix cards, a decade later, they were not up to the task. The cards that they made were very mediocre, really at best. They were big and clunky. They had a plasticky look to them. The transition from images was really fuzzy. The design, they couldn't really do much with it, which again is kind of shocking when you look back at the Xerography cards of Kellogg's. Those really looked great. So it begs the question, what was the deal? And whatever the deal was, it limited the ability for Sportflix to have any potential heading into the 1990s. Even though I don't think there was a place for Sportflix in the 1990s, or at least not in the incarnation that they were in at the end of the 80s, still, the potential of lenticular cards was there. It's just that Sportflix never capitalized on it. But after the split to where Pinnacle was on its own, they decided in 1994 to bring Sportflix back. And when they did that, well, they did everything right. The technology had grown up a lot, and that was really important for these cards. There are a couple of things about the cards that bring them up to date to fit with the mid-90s, and the first one was the way that they made the cards allowed for deep, rich colors and deep, sharp blacks. These cards carry across with almost the same vitality and vibrance as regular cards. And the difference from competing in 1990 with main cards and 1994 was dramatic. So not only did these cards catch up to 1990 card standards, they caught up to 1994 card standards with the richness of these images. But about the images, here they didn't do what they'd been doing in the 1980s where they had 3 images. Here they just did 2, but they got the quality so good that they were able to snap between images very, very crisply, which means that most of the time you actually see the image as opposed to seeing the fuzzy blur from image to image. And the snap with these cards is almost instantaneous to the point where it's actually fun to see it work. These cards, unfortunately, they don't align it in a way so that when you look perpendicular, you see just one image. So you are going to see a lot of slight fuzziness going on, or slight image transposition in these images, but still, it's very minimal. For basically all of these cards, you can see very clearly what the image and the whole card design was. And even the motion on these cards was very, very strong. So the cards had the ability to finally look like real cards, and they did. The design looked good, the image looked good, everything about the cards worked, and even on the card back, the whole card back looks like a 1990s fun card back with really rich colors, some gold foil. Really, across the board, this looked like a 1994 card, and it fit in the industry. Now, along with that, you also had the ability to get more motion or 3D effects because of how well tuned everything was on these cards. And so all in the 1980s, the subset cards were mediocre because it was like multiple images, or there really wasn't much they could do, and so there wasn't much that they did do. Here, because of the technological opportunities, they made subset cards that were very, very impressive. The Star Picks cards, this is what the subset was, and these cards have a bold red background with really good, or I shouldn't say really good, but fairly good 3D effect ingrained into the card. So when you look at the card, it looks kind of fun and kind of interesting, and well, this card alone blows away anything that had been in the first run of Sportflix. So this card set was actually starting to make some serious progress. Now, they did do some inserts, and not the kind of inserts you're going to brag about, but they also did a couple of cards that looked at just at Paul Molitor and at Cliff Floyd. 2 SP cards kind of thrown in there, so they had these as well. But for the inserts, they had movers and shakers, as in they had the mover set and they had the shaker set. The cards here for movers, they have full bleed image. They have a very colorful gear down at the bottom and then a colorful band that comes off from it. And that's the whole design on the card front. Very simple, very basic. Well, very, very simple and basic. And on the card back, the player's first name is in gold foil. The shaker's card set, in contrast, is not a gear, but a colorful disc and a banner that comes off and a full bleed card. And on the card back, you'll notice that the last name is what's in gold foil. So if you look at the two card backs, it looks like this is supposed to be one set, like the numbers should be syncopated or something like that. So you have each mover has a shaker as well, first name gold foil, second name gold foil. But that's not how they did it. They did it as separate sets that were basically like twins separated at birth. I guess, I don't know. But you can see that it was a very simple model. They weren't doing very much with the first 1994 model. They didn't even bother to do parallels for these cards. But that would be short-lived because they also did another 1994 release, which was their Rookies and Traded set. And this is a set where the cards they're more adventurous in every single facet. Starting with the main cards, where they have, in one phase, the card is about as simple as you're going to get. You can hardly even see anything down at the bottom. When you transition, you get some color fields back there. You get more of a design element. So they're playing around a bit more, although they don't have gold foil on the card back, even though it looks like they should. But the rookie cards are the ones you really can see the design because they have a sash down at the bottom, they have the team logo floating in space, and then up in the top corner they have a space for a portrait with a whole backdrop that says 1994 Rookies. This is a card that is extremely distinct, and all of the detailing on the card reads very strong at all times. So this is a card that, like with the main set cards of the initial set, it's very distinctive, very clear, but these cards are better made, really. They come across a lot better. And all of these cards also come with an artist-proof parallel. So every single card in the set, the artist-proof parallel is done the same way as you would see in like Score. Nothing is special on the card back. It's just on the front, they have the gold foil emblem, which is very easy to see because the lenticular card doesn't really look fuzzy, but the gold foil is very crisp and very clear on every single one of these cards. And then they did do an SP card in this set as well, which has Ryan Kelso and it has Manny Ramirez on it as an additional card thrown in for these packs. But it was kind of nice to have the SP cards because, again, they only had two insert sets. And the first insert set is their Going, Going, Gone cards. Home run hitters, not a lot to say about this card. It has a yellow streak or a yellow stripe down one side, which makes it very much stand out, but otherwise it's a very, very bland card set. That's not the same to say about the 1994 Rookie Star Picks cards, which in this case, this is about as complex as you're going to find from Sportflix, or about as complex as you're going to see from any lenticular card. Here, this is so well built. The deep, rich colors are very vibrant. There's a lot of depth to this card, and there's just enough interest to make this whole environment read well for anybody who's curious about exploring these cards. This card is a rousing success for lenticular cards and for Sportflix as well. And I do have to mention there's also one other card, which is that at FanFest they did All-Star cards, which have two images in the middle. They have kind of a color theme on either corner with the player names, and it has actually pretty good motion with the colors on either corner. But they also had these that were done as giveaways at the event, so they were not in packs, but that was the other thing that they did for 1994. So that was what they ended 1994 with. They had two sets, 4 insert sets across the two sets, parallels only for the second set, but they had now practiced and rehearsed, and they were now in the flow of getting ready to make 1990s cards, mid-1990s cards with lenticular technology. So in 1995, they went to make their Sportflix set, only they ran into a problem. See, Pinnacle didn't completely own Sportflix, the name, so they had to change it. So they changed it from Sportflix to Sportflix, or more correctly, they removed the CS at the end of Sportflix and replaced it with an X, which actually fits really well with the 2-image snap between the two. It just kind of fits. But from this point on, Sportflix would be a different name in terms of spelling from what it had been in the past. The cards were very grown up. For the main 1995, well, not the main 1990, there was only one release, but for the 1995 Sportflix cards, these cards have a very well-crafted design. It is basically a bunch of intricate things that are on there with some subtlety. I mean, they really worked hard to get this card to look like any card in 1995 might look. And it was one of the best designed cards of 1995. It may not have been the most showy card, but it really did look like the kind of card that you would expect from a card company in this year. So big success. Although on the card back, interestingly, it looks like it's designed for kids, which, to be fair, it largely was designed for kids, but the back really does show that off well. And these cards do, once again, have the artist-proof parallel for the entire set. The artist-proof logo has changed now to be more truncated, which means it's a logo that could be a little bit easier to miss. But still, it's the only gold foil that's showing up on these cards, and so it's something that still can read extremely well for collectors, even though it doesn't take up as much space. Because they only had the one release, they took the rookie and traded cards and they combined them into the main set. And so for players who traded teams, those cards have a portrait of the player, and then on the flip side, they have the team logo. And I look at this and I go, man, I wish they'd done an entire subset or insert set with the logos of every single team. These are gorgeous images. I love how they look, and I'm really curious how they would have done an insert set or a subset of all of these cards. It's too bad they didn't do that, but at least we did get these cards where the players had traded teams. Likewise, the rookies were in the card set, and the rookies are truly amazing because the effect on the back is not an attractive effect. It's orangish red versus green with yellow stripes in between. That's not the point. The point is that those stripes move on the card endlessly. And I mean endlessly. See, the effect on a Sportflix card, or the effect on a lenticular card, has a certain focal range, and then it repeats and repeats. So as you move a card, whether it's flipping back and forth between images, or if you have motion, that motion will move, and then it'll start over, and it'll start up. Here, they timed it so that when you hit that transition point, you're starting over again. So when you move the card, you go all the way from one extreme to the other, and those lines just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. It looks endless, and it's impressive. Had they used different colors or a different pattern to make it look sharper or to make it look more intriguing, this would be an all-time card. But instead, it's an all-time technology. This is one of the most impressive lenticular cards ever made. And again, it's just too much a shame that it is as bold and brazen as it is, but still, I'm glad they did it. And then they also included checklist cards in this set. And the checklist cards, 2 images of one player in most cases. On the card back, though, these checklists are all for either the AL or the NL players, because in the card set, the players are mixed all over, so it's all random. And so these checklists that Score and Pinnacle like to make were where they took only the AL players and put them on one checklist and only the NL players on another checklist, or in football, it was AFC and NFC, and I don't know why. Who cares about one league versus the other? It makes no sense. If you were going to make team checklists and you just broke it into these are the AFC teams or AL teams, these are the NFC teams or the NL teams, that makes sense. But doing a skip number set where you're just getting the AL cards or just the NL cards makes no sense. But this is how they did the checklists. And I think I'm feeling good and I'm going to stop ranting. Now, they did not do any SP cards, but they did do 4 insert sets, which means they basically took everything from 1994 and duplicated it in a single release in 1995. And the first insert set is Dominators. This is a card that is very ambitious, and because of that, it falters. There's not much depth in there. There's not much distinction between the images. I'm glad that they made it, but I wish that they had put more care into it, because what they were trying to do in this card could have read so much better, either with another technology or with a further refinement of this technology. But still, it was very ambitious. Then they have another one of the most impressive lenticular cards of all time, which is Double Take. And Double Take, I mean, this is really impressive. It's 2 players, and it is what we normally view as a lenticular, or as an acetate card, because it's clear. But here it just means there's no backing. That's all it means. But the thing about this is that when you snap between the 2 images, the other player disappears, which makes sense, right? Except when the player disappears, he literally disappears, and you can just see right through where he was. And that is a trip. I mean, once you understand the technology, it makes sense. But visually, it just doesn't make sense. Here's the player's head, and then you move it, and here's another player's head. And this is empty. It's gone. There's nothing there. Wow. I've always loved these cards. The way they come through is really impressive. Now, they also have a set called Hammer Time, which is bringing back a phrase from a half decade earlier, which seems kind of redundant to bring it back. But hey, I give them all the credit in the world for reusing the name in a way that is pretty cool. These are home run hitters. Now, the thing about this card is that this is designed in pretty much the same way as the Detonators card, where it's designed with so much complexity, you don't really get a lot of depth, and you don't get a lot of range of motion. So it's a little tough to get the full effect. But the design is really kind of interesting, because obviously it's home run hitters, and there are a whole bunch of hammers floating above your head up, and seeing all of that on a cloudy day, that's not really what you want to see hanging above you in inclement weather. It's an odd approach that they did for a card, but they had this one, and then the last insert set that they did was called Promotion. And Promotion is a card that is really ambitious, because the whole idea is that it's the player who morphs into the team logo, or the logo that morphs into the player, and they didn't have quite enough range to really make the effect work. You have to move it quickly to make the thing work. Tough to really capture, but I think they would do a better job in 1996, but for 1995, they were on their way. But again, the technology was getting a lot better, and there were a number of cards here in 1995 that actually did read beautifully as great illustrations of what lenticular card technology was capable of. So that's what that's basically 94 and 95. I'm going to look at 1996 in the upcoming video, which is going to be actually 2 sets for 1996. But this is what they did for the core of the 94 and the 95 Sportflix mid-90s reemergence of lenticular cards. So if you do have any questions about these cards, please do let me know. I've already done a video on the 1980s Sportflix cards, so if you haven't had a chance to see that, go check that out. Also, if you haven't subscribed, I do urge you to do so. Please check out my other videos, and yeah, thank you very much for watching.